My beloved child, I know you believe that your silence is harmless, that if you do not respond to me, then everything remains as before, that a neutral heart will lead you nowhere. But you must understand this profound secret of the soul. There is no neutrality in the spiritual life. A door that is not locked is not a door of no decision. It is a door open by default for whatever chooses to enter. A soul that does not listen to me is not in a state of rest, but in a state of abandonment. And that abandonment itself is an invitation for darkness to establish its path. You do not need to destroy your life by drastic decisions. You only need to let go of me. A room whose windows are left shut does not need a vandal to become stale. It becomes musty on its own. Not responding is not silence. Not responding is silent cooperation with the pull that draws you away from me. Understand this, my child. A drop of water left still evaporates without wind. Darkness does not need to drag you downward. It only waits for you to stop clinging to the light. And from that moment, a trajectory has already begun. You once thought that bad actions were what pushed you away from me. But many souls have slipped into darkness not because they opposed me, but because they failed to respond to me in the most ordinary days of their lives. You believed that indifference was innocent, but indifference is the breeding ground for every spiritual attack. The enemy does not need a blow to bring you down. It only needs you to fall asleep in the neutral zone it has sown. There, you gradually stop being sensitive, stop being watchful, stop asking me, and when you no longer ask me, you ask yourself, where self-reliance becomes the lullaby of isolation. Not responding to me, my child, is like a person rowing downstream who drops the oar. You do not need to aim toward the waterfall. You only need to remain still, and the current will carry you there. The spirit does not need to betray me, to drift from me. It only needs to stop listening, and that not listening becomes the first rhythm of disorientation. My child, when I speak, I do not seek someone to analyze me, I seek someone to respond. My word is not a test for you to solve. It is the anchor you must grasp when the waves arise. When you do not respond to me, you believe you are preserving your freedom, but freedom cannot exist in a vacuum. Freedom exists only when it has direction. And when I am not your direction, other voices will become your compass. The enemy does not attempt to prove that I am wrong. It merely distracts you with other concerns until my voice becomes a faint sound in a sea of information. You will not hear me when you become accustomed to hearing yourself. And you will not seek me when you believe that silence is a safe state. But my child, silence is never a pause. It is the stretch of road you have already begun walking toward the place where I do not dwell. John 10:27 speaks of this gently. My sheep hear my voice not because I shout, but because the soul that knows me will turn its head when it hears my tone. You have known days when your heart seems flat, no faith, no resistance, no desire to do evil, and you think I am fine. I just need to wait for inspiration to return. But it is precisely in those days that indifference quietly reshapes the inner structure of your soul. You do not realize that each time you delay prayer, a thin layer of dust settles on your mind. Each time you overlook the gentle prompting of the Holy Spirit, a small cord wraps itself around your heart. A soul that does not respond to me is like a plant that does not absorb sunlight. It does not die immediately, but it dries from within, not by storm, but by lack of nourishment. You believe you are merely waiting, but in reality, you have begun to leave the light without knowing. My child, I do not rebuke you for being weak. I only want you to see that silence before my voice is a decision. You do not need to say no to drift away from me. You only need not to say yes. And it is that unsaid yes that opens a corridor for darkness, where it patiently arranges thoughts, habits, and patterns of delay. You think silence is temporary, but the soul does not understand neutrality. It is either moving toward me or drifting outward like a boat sitting still, yet carried by the current. Even though the rower has not turned the rudder, you may ask, how do I know I am drifting? My child, look at whether your heart still longs for me. If prayer becomes heavy, scripture becomes foreign, and repentance grows rare, then you are not standing still, you are on a downward slope. My child, here is the truth I want engraved upon your soul. Darkness does not need to conquer you with force, it only needs you to be silent before me. That silence is like a room sealed with closed windows. Moisture spreads. The smell of dampness arises, and you become accustomed to it. Once accustomed, you call it normal, and you no longer remember how the light once filled that space. You will not see demons triumphing, but you will see my presence fading in your life. And that fading itself is the proof that your trajectory has shifted. I have seen many souls fall not because of great sins, but because they spent long days without answering me. They did not hate me, they simply stopped approaching me, and darkness completed the rest. Silence is not no decision, it is choosing to stand outside, my word. Because there is no third place between light and darkness. When you believe you are only stepping back, only delaying your answer, only letting other things go first before me, you imagine you are still on the safe line, belonging to neither side. But the soul has no gray territory to rest in. It only has the ground illuminated by my word and the ground beyond its reach. When you are silent before my voice, you have already stepped out of the place. My word protects, even if your foot has moved only slightly. The light does not withdraw from you, but when you turn your face another direction, the light is no longer what you look toward. Darkness does not need to drag you far, it only needs you to stand in a place where my voice is not the measure of your choices. From there, every future decision will no longer be tested by what have I spoken, but by what do I think. What do others say? What does the world demand? And when the center of reference shifts, the trajectory of your soul has already changed, even if outwardly you keep the same religious habits. There are souls who still serve, still speak of me, yet remain silent in the deepest place, where they no longer ask me, and that silence is proof that they have chosen to stand outside my word. You must see that every spiritual reality is formed by small choices, repeated, seemingly harmless. No one falls out of the light in a single night. Just as no room becomes moldy after a single breath, it begins with one day when you feel tired and think, it is fine if I don't pray today. Then a few more times when you say, I already know these things. I don't need to listen again. With each such moment, you move from the place where my word is breath and step into the place where your own opinions become the loudest sound. Silence before me is, in essence, agreement with another voice taking my place. There is no space that remains empty forever. If my word does not fill it, something else will. When you no longer ask me about small things, you will struggle to hear me at the turning points, and eventually, you will no longer recognize the difference between my voice and the voice of the enemy. My child, many times you reassure yourself by saying, I am not resisting you. I am just not ready to respond. But delay in the realm of light gradually becomes dwelling in the gray, and the gray will eventually lean fully toward the dark. There is no such place as a safe in-between between me and darkness. For two kingdoms do not coexist upon one throne. Either my word is the ultimate authority, or something else has already taken its place within you. When you ask the most important questions of your life without bringing me into the conversation, you have already chosen to stand outside my word. Even if your lips still call upon my name, the enemy does not need you to openly deny me. It only needs you to live as though my word carries no weight in your daily decisions. Every time you choose to cling to worry instead of trust, to keep sin instead of repentance, to pursue applause instead of presence, you have affirmed that your position is not under my voice, but under the influence of another call. I do not say these things to corner you into guilt, but to help you recognize the seriousness of those seemingly harmless silences. Silence never arrives alone. It brings an entire ecosystem within. There, sin becomes reasonable. Compromise becomes practical. Fear becomes prudence. And distance from me becomes busyness. When you no longer allow my word to examine you, you begin to normalize what once caused you sorrow. A small lie, an ignored prompting to repent, a decision that elevates benefit above integrity, all wrapped in the phrase, "This is a special case." But such specialness does not come from me. It comes from the fact that you have begun living outside the realm where my word still has the final say. If you honestly look back, you will see the boundary has been moved, not by me, but by the prolonged silence of your own choosing. Yet, my child, I reveal this truth not to sentence you, but to open the path back. If silence is choosing to stand outside my word, then even the smallest response is the first step toward the light. You do not need to begin with a long prayer. You only need to break the silence with one authentic cry, even if it is feeble. A room damp for years does not become clean in a moment. But as soon as the window opens, fresh air begins its work. In the same way, when you admit before me, "I've been away from your word for too long," you have moved from the illusion of neutrality and returned under the light of truth. There is no third place between light and darkness, but there is always a path from darkness back to light. And that path always begins with a response small, trembling, but sincere. Extended silence numbs the spirit, causing you to no longer recognize my voice, like someone accustomed to darkness who forgets how light once existed. My child, there is a dangerous moment the soul often fails to notice, not when it opposes me, but when it stops responding to me. Silence ceases to be a moment of peaceful listening and becomes a blanket covering spiritual sensitivity, making every movement from me feel unfamiliar, like eyes that have lived too long in a cellar. Even the smallest beam of light makes them ache and tremble, not because light is a threat, but because darkness has redefined what feels normal. When you allow that silence to linger, you no longer know which impulse is a warning and which is an invitation. You only feel exhaustion and reluctance. Like someone who has lain still so long, they forget the sensation of standing. I have not lost my voice, but you lose the ability to recognize it within yourself. In that prolonged silence, the soul begins to contract like a breath growing shorter. It is not because I have removed the air, but because you have forgotten to breathe deeply. You become accustomed to shallow breaths. So when I offer fresh air, you feel suffocated. Spiritual fatigue does not come from me, but from failing to let my word nourish you. You live on the energy of anxiety, the adrenaline of urgency, the busy schedule that masks emptiness. Each action becomes a hurried inhale, not deep enough to feed the lungs, only enough to fool you into thinking you are fine. A soul in the land of silence does not need the enemy to push it down. It only needs to continue forgetting that it once heard me, once felt me, once knew my peace. When the memory of the spirit begins to fade, you start to believe that dryness is normal, and light which was meant for you becomes something extravagant. My child, numbness never happens in a single moment. It is the result of days you did not pray because you were busy, nights you did not speak with me because you were tired, mornings you forgot to thank me because you assumed life was automatic. Each forgetting is a step backward from the source of life. Then one day, you no longer recognize how far you have drifted. I am still speaking, but all you hear is the wind. I am still touching, but all you feel is fatigue. I am still guiding, but you call it coincidence. When silence has become habit, your soul will try to live on memory, not the memory of this moment, but of seasons past, when my voice was as clear as the heartbeat in your chest. But memory cannot replace life. The soul lives by the breath of today. It cannot cling forever to former encounters while ignoring my voice now. And when that numbness stretches on, you will begin to see light as a threat. I come not with thunder, but with a gentle invitation. Yet the soul accustomed to darkness trembles before gentleness itself. You do not want to hear my word, not because you hate me, but because my word touches the places you have left abandoned, the places you fear to face again. Light does not hurt you, it only reveals wounds that have been neglected too long. I see every such space within you, the relationships you do not want to surrender, the desires you refuse to release, the plans you elevate above my will. Each of these is a dark corner, and when the light reaches it, you recoil like eyes facing their first dawn. But my child, that is not condemnation, it is life returning. I do not ask you to fling open every door at once. Just as someone coming out of a deep cellar cannot gaze at the sun in the first moment, I only ask you to begin with one deep breath, not a polished prayer, but the simple acknowledgement I am weary from being far from you. When the soul utters this, it breaks the silence that has frozen it. Your eyes may not yet see clearly, but the light has found a way in. Your lungs may not yet be full, but breath has returned. I know you have been in the darkness long. I know you have forgotten my voice, but I have never forgotten you. You do not need to recover your entire spiritual past to return. You only need to stop continuing the silence. A single ray is enough to remind you that light still exists, and a single breath is enough to remind you that you are still alive. I do not abandon you because of silence. I wait, like a father keeping the door open, not locking it in condemnation. My child, I am not the harsh knocking that makes the soul tremble whenever it responds too slowly. I am the oil lamp standing through the night, not blaming those who sleep, only waiting for them to open their eyes. That light does not burn because of your worthiness, but because my nature is light. Silence does not cause me to withdraw my hand from your life. It only keeps you from feeling the warmth I extend toward you. There are souls who believe silence disqualifies them from my house, but that house has no latch, only a threshold where I stand like the father in Luke 15, not chasing the child who has left, but never turning my back on them. I watch you, not to judge, but to recognize the moment your heart turns back, even if only by one small step. You think I will leave you when you have been silent for too long. But my child, I have known the seasons of darkness within you even before they arrived. I know the weariness that makes you not want to speak. I know the fear that makes you step back. I know the wounds that make you afraid to hear me. I do not wait for you in irritation. I wait in love. Your lack of words does not make you less valuable to me. It only causes you to temporarily forget your own worth in me. Like an oil lamp in the night that does not run off to find the one who has fallen asleep. The lamp simply burns, and in the morning, when their eyes open, they know the light has never left them. I am patient, not because I am weak, but because the soul needs time to realize that its silence cannot change what I decided from the beginning. You belong to me, my child. The harsh accusations you mistake for my voice often do not come from me, but from the enemy. It whispers, "You've been silent too long. You are not worthy to return. You must fix yourself first before you can come near to God." But like the father in Luke 15, I do not require you to present a flawless report. I do not demand that you prove your faithfulness. I only wait for you to step onto the threshold. Restoration does not begin with the right answers. It begins with a single, honest glance. Fragile, but turned in my direction. When you turn your head back, I am already standing there. When you merely think, I want to return, I have already seen that thought. No plea is too clumsy. No tear is wasted. I do not ask you to analyze your pain. I ask you to place that pain in my hands. The roads you walk in silence never slip beyond my sight. I have walked beside you when you believed you were walking alone. I have kept you when you had no strength to ask for protection. I have guarded your soul from abysses whose names you do not know. There were falls you thought would be the end, but I shattered that ending so that you would still live. I allowed you to sleep, but I did not allow sleep to become oblivion. I let the storm pass over, but I did not let your soul dissolve in its waves. The only thing I do not do is force you to return, for love does not coerce, it calls. Like a father standing at the doorway, I surrender your freedom to you, but I have never surrendered you to the enemy. My child, remember this, I do not ask how long you have been silent. I ask whether you are willing to respond. I do not measure your return by the volume of your prayer, but by the sincerity of your heart. Even if your voice is as soft as a breeze, even if your words are as shattered as broken porcelain, I still hear. As the oil lamp does not blame the one who slept, I do not blame you for having been silent. I simply wait for the moment you open your eyes. That moment does not need to be dramatic, does not need tears, does not need promises. It only needs a whispered question. Are you still there? And I will answer, as I have always answered, I have never left you. My mercy is not the cancellation of consequences, but the space for you to turn back before those consequences become chains around your heart. My child, you often think of mercy as a ticket out of responsibility, like a rain that washes away every footprint so no one can see where you have been. But mercy does not erase the path you have walked. It opens a new path, so you have a chance to leave the road that leads to destruction. The consequences of sin do not disappear just because you close your eyes. They only pause when you step into the light I have opened for you. I do not drag you back with a rope. I place you in a quiet interval where you are still able to turn around. In that stillness, you are allowed to breathe, to look back, to see that the freedom you thought you were holding is actually a lock, slowly fastening around your spirit. I give you time, not so you can exploit it, but so you can awaken before the chain tightens to the point that you no longer feel you have been imprisoned. The fact that consequences do not come at once is not because I am weak, but because I want your heart to be touched by clarity before darkness hardens into a way of life. Like someone who sows poisonous seed in a garden but the tree has not yet borne fruit. You assume you are still safe, but silence is not my sign of agreement. It is the time I give for you to realize that what you are nurturing does not belong to life. I do not run after you to snatch every small mistake from your hand, because that would only make you think I am a watcher of your every minor slip. I allow you to feel the pulse of your own spirit, to recognize where there is decline, where there is dryness. Where are the signs you are losing your spiritual breath without anyone needing to point it out? And right in those first steps of lost direction, mercy opens like a sky, giving you the choice to turn back. My child, the enemy wants you to misunderstand mercy. It whispers, "It's fine. He will forgive you. Just go a little farther." But mercy is not a shield for you to rush into the fire. It is the stream where you can be cleansed while you still know you are unclean. A heart accustomed to delay will soon accept sin as normal. And by the time consequences appear, you no longer fear losing God, because you have forgotten there ever was a God. When sin has not yet crushed you, you still have the chance to turn back when it has become a lifestyle. Repentance will feel like tearing yourself out of your own skin. Mercy is the distance between error and destruction. the space I place you in, so your soul can realize, if I keep going, I will no longer be myself. Like a father watching a child play at the edge of a pond. I do not immediately shout in anger to make them fear the water. I let them feel the cold at their feet, so their own heart learns the boundary. But when you go deeper, when the water reaches your knees and the rising waves begin to swallow the peace in your heart, I call. In that moment, my words are not a dry warning, but a hand reaching out to pull you from danger before you lose the strength to stand up on your own. I do not want consequences to turn into chains, because when the chain has formed, you begin to think of yourself as a prisoner, and prisoners do not dare walk to a door, even when it is open. I want you to turn back while your feet still remember the way, while your heart still remembers my voice, while your spiritual memory has not faded to the point that it can no longer recognize the light that once shone. My child, every day you delay repentance. The consequence does not lie still like a stone. It grows like roots beneath the ground. You do not see it from the surface, but it digs deep, spreads wide, claiming part after part of your soul. When I draw you back in mercy, it is so you can cut those roots while they are still young, before they become a system gripping so tightly that every attempt at freedom feels unbearable. I do not want your heart to bleed before you return. I want you to return before the bleeding begins. I do not want you to scream in despair before you see me. I want you to see me in quiet, with eyes that are weak but still able to choose. My mercy is not just the word forgiven, it is the word you still have a way home. I do not need a polished apology, I need a returning step. The return itself is the deepest prayer. My child, there are souls who believe they must find perfect phrases, refine their words, gather all their mental strength before daring to come back to me. They imagine that I am the one who only listens to prayers that are holy enough, exact enough, dignified enough, but I do not require the craftsmanship of language. I seek the movement of the heart. True prayer is not a chain of flawless sentences. It is the inner turning of the soul back toward me. Like the prodigal son in Luke 15, who prepared a long speech of repentance, only to have his words fall apart the moment his feet touched the doorstep. The father did not wait for him to recite the full confession, did not demand explanations, did not ask why he had been silent. His return was the prayer the father had long been waiting for. My child, if you look carefully at that story, you will see that the apology was never the core of the journey. While he was in the distant land, the son rehearsed his words over and over to prepare. He believed he needed to get it right, that he had to prove his sincerity through his phrases. But the first act that changed the course of his life was not a sentence. It was a step. He got up and went to his father. It was not his tears that moved the father's heart, but his feet leaving the far country. That action broke the silence. That action shattered the self-deception that he was still doing fine. That action was the only battle his soul really had to dare to fight. Everything else, the robe, the ring, the feast was what I added. Not because the son was worthy, but because I had never stopped loving him. My child, there are souls exhausted in sin, confused in fear, paralyzed in shame, and they believe they must heal their wounds before they are allowed to return. They imagine their apology must be strong enough to compensate for the years they have lost. But I do not require you to mend the past before stepping into the present. I ask only one thing: will you come back? Returning is a confession at the deepest level because it shows that you have admitted your deviation, admitted your weariness, admitted that there is no safer place than in me. Some souls write hundreds of pleas. Some souls keep silent for years. But I do not weigh words. I look at the direction in which you turn toward me or away from me. One tired breath whispering, "I cannot live like this anymore," has greater value than 1,000 arguments spoken from a soul that has no intention of changing. My child, remember this returning is not the achievement of human courage, but the surrender of hope. It is like a weary arm lifting above the water, like a drowning person barely forming the words, "Save me." I do not require you to explain why you fell into the water. I simply reach out my hand to pull you up. Scripture says that after Peter stepped out of the boat and began to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." It was the shortest, simplest, and most honest prayer. Yet it was enough for me to stretch out my hand. My child, I do not wait for polished words. I wait for a heart that knows it cannot save itself. In this place, prayer is not found on the lips. It is found in the direction of your steps and the focus of your gaze. There are souls who try to build their apology like a wall of protection, thinking they must prepare a perfect repentance before I allow them to come near. But I do not receive you through a checkpoint of language. I receive you through the heartbeat of a returning heart. You have fallen. You have chosen wrongly. You have wandered far from me. None of this has made me withdraw from you. I only wait for the moment you stop explaining and start walking, like a lamp burning in the night. I do not need you to describe why you woke up late. I only want you to see the light and move toward it. Each small step you take, even trembling, has the power to break every chain that once bound you in silence. When you rise, heaven shakes, not because you are strong, but because you have allowed me to become your strength. My child, there are seasons in your life that seem fine simply because you have not collapsed, and yet your soul inside has been dry for a long time, like land that has received no rain but still pretends to be fertile with a thin layer of grass on top. Your silence is not merely the absence of words to me, it is the withholding of your heart from me, causing you to live on the memory of an old faith instead of the breath that moves today. I do not condemn you for those days. I only want you to see the truth. Silence does not shield you from pain. It only blinds you to the decay within. Every soul that drifts away from me begins with that invisible silence, like someone gradually losing their sense of smell and no longer realizing that the room they are in has rotted. My child, I do not ask you for prayers filled with emotion or blazing resolve. I only want you to admit that the silence has worn you out, that you no longer want to live this way. The moment you stop and take a deep breath in your heart, that is already the first yes. I want to come home that needs no words. What you do not realize is that returning always begins inside, long before it shows itself in outward action. A soul opens the door not with its hand, but with the inner acknowledgement, I need you. And from that acknowledgement, the steps arrange themselves. You once believed you had to resolve all your sins, cleanse every stain, and stand upright on your own before coming to me. But I tell you, my child, you cannot save yourself. Dry ground cannot create rain. A broken branch cannot reattach itself to the tree. When you try to do everything before returning to me, you are keeping your soul in a land of death. I see those efforts. I know how heavy they are. I know how they drain you. I do not wait for you to be complete. I wait for you to be genuine. And that genuineness does not lie in words, but in the turning of the heart. You only need to turn your face away from the darkness, and the light will begin to seek you out. My child, returning is not a sprint. It is the first step placed again on ground whose feel you had forgotten. Like a long sick person learning to breathe anew. You do not need to be strong. From the first moment, you need to be consistent. You do not need to shout my name to prove your faith. You need enough humility to whisper, Lord, please touch me. A soul that opens its mouth like that is not trying to persuade me. It is freeing itself from the invisible rope that has bound it. I have watched countless souls cling to silence for fear of judgment. But it is that very silence that suffocates them, not the sin. You think silence is safe. But silence is like a small fire eating through the forest from within, drying every tree long before the flames are visible on the surface. My child, remember this one thing: I do not measure your return by how loud it sounds. I measure it by its direction. The woman who touched the hem of my garment did not utter a single word, yet her faith pierced through the walls of silence and sickness, allowing life to flow again into what had withered. She did not need a long prayer. She only needed to reach out her hand, and that was enough for the miracle to unfold. In the same way, returning does not require thunder. It may be a decisive breath, a small step, a single glance turned toward me. My child, I see every movement of your soul, no matter how slight you think it is. I know every tremor you hide, every effort you do not mention, every time you gather courage to whisper in the dark. I do not look for noise in your prayers. I look for truth in your depths. Do not be afraid when you find that you do not yet know what to say to me. Souls that have crossed the desert all understand water does not appear because of the cry, but because a deep source was already there beneath the ground. When you sit down and simply admit, I need you, the dry soil begins to crack, not because of emotion, but because life is returning. I do not want you to erase the seasons when you were lost, nor do I want you to pretend to be strong to earn acceptance. I want you to be honest with yourself, because that honesty opens the road that leads you back to me. My child, do not despise this tiny moment. A spring begins with a single drop, a long road begins with a first step, and the return of your soul is just the same. There are turning points that do not begin with thunderous cries, but with a small whisper spoken in the dark. When the soul admits that silence has not saved it, and fear is no longer a refuge, you do not need to know how to express it. You do not need to prepare the perfect words. The only thing I seek is that movement, when the heart gently turns away from the long night and toward the light. I do not look at how far you have wandered from me. I look at the direction you are returning. You think I require you to understand everything before you may come home, but it is the return that opens understanding. Like one resurfacing after sinking beneath the water, the first breath is not elegant, but it is life-saving. When you merely attempt to say a few words to me, and your voice breaks, I do not hear the confusion, I hear the life within it. I hear the soul pounding against its chains, desperate to escape the prison of silence. In Scripture, the prodigal son did not return with a speech, did not carry a redemption plan, did not analyze how to craft his apology in a respectable manner. I will arise and go to my father, only that single sentence, without embellishment, without dazzling promises. Yet it was enough to reverse the destiny of a soul. Luke 1:5-18. Understand this: I do not wait for perfection in expression. I wait for honesty in direction. Human beings think prayer must convince me, but I am not the one in need of convincing. It is the soul that must persuade itself to return. The son did not come home to prove his transformation. He came because he realized that life does not exist outside love. From that moment, every path began to open, not because he knew every step he had to take, but because he knew where he had to go. Returning is always a simple act before it becomes a long journey. Just as a person standing by a river need not understand the current to bend down and drink, just as a seed does not need to analyze the season to split its shell, just as a bird does not calculate the wind before spreading its wings, the soul is the same. I know you have lived in silence long enough to forget how to speak. I know there are nights when you look back at the past and grieve every opportunity you think you wasted, but I do not keep a ledger to weigh each mistake before allowing you to return. I only look to see whether you step toward me, and when you do, the things you fear: judgment, the closing door, reproachful eyes will not meet you at the threshold. Like the father in the parable, I do not wait for you to knock so I may interrogate. I run to meet you while your soul is still far away. Because I recognized your step long before you recognized home. Some say to me in silence, I do not know where to begin. But beginnings are not defined by volume. They are defined by direction. Every broken-voiced plea is still a prayer if it moves toward me. And every grand prayer is still empty if it tries to manufacture strength instead of offering a broken heart. When the prodigal son returned, he was only a tired body, a bruised soul, a dream gone cold, but he did not return with honor. He returned with truth, the truth that life does not exist outside the love that formed him. That truth carried him into open arms, and only then did he learn what it means to be covered. Your return is the same. You may think you need plans of restitution, instant demonstrations of repentance, strong words, ambitious goals, but I do not need any of those to love you. I need your heart to turn back. That is all. When you dare to step forward even while trembling, even while uncertain, I will meet you at that crossroads. You do not need to understand how silence has harmed you. You only need to know that you no longer want to live inside it. And from that moment, you will know what the prodigal son understood. You are not knocking so that the door may open. The door has been opened long before, waiting for you to return. There are souls that do not fall because of great sins, but because their days are so quiet that my call dissolves into the numb rhythm of life. You do not see the light go out in an instant, but little by little, like a lamp running out of oil that no one notices, until all that remains is a faint red ember. Silence does not keep you safe. It makes you lose your bearings. Like a person at sea who sees gentle ripples and assumes the surface is calm, while beneath them is a current slowly pulling them away from shore, not loud, not violent, only gradual. When the soul grows accustomed to silence, it stops asking questions, stops seeking the light, stops calling out, and darkness needs nothing more than that to do its work, to lull you into believing that nothing is wrong. I have seen too many hearts like this, not screaming, not resisting, only drifting, until one day they realize they are somewhere no longer able to hear my voice, not because I stopped speaking, but because they grew more familiar with the noise of the world than with the whisper of life. In Scripture, when Peter walked on the water, he did not sink because of violent waves, but because his eyes turned away from me. Fear did not come from the storm outside, but from the silence within the moment. He no longer called my name, no longer fixed his gaze on me, no longer conversed with me as he did in those first steps full of trust. One brief lapse was enough for the sea to claim his body. But look at this, with an open heart, he did not lose everything because of that lapse. He only needed to cry out, Lord, save me. Matthew 1:430. A short sentence with no demands, no explanations, no presentation, and I reached out immediately. There was no lengthy prayer, no theological argument, no grand vow, only a soul that understood silence would be its death if it kept it. The moment he broke that silence, the storm lost its power, the water lost its grip, the darkness lost its claim over him. From this, you must understand, returning is not you climbing onto the water, it is I lifting you from the place where the water has swallowed you. My child, spiritual silence always contains an unspoken sentence I can manage on my own. You never say it with your mouth, but your soul speaks it with its choices. You delay prayer because you think not yet. You delay repentance because you think it isn't serious yet. You delay returning because you think, I'll do it later. These gaps create a chair for the enemy to sit in and begin whispering shortcuts. Stay busy a little longer. Seek just a bit more approval. Indulge a little more pleasure. Push the spiritual path to another time. Then one day you awaken and realize you are stranded in the open sea, no anchor, no direction, and the small whispers of, "I can manage," have become screams of, "I can no longer hear you." Darkness does not need to attack a strong soul. It only needs to keep you silent long enough that you forget how to call my name. I do not condemn your silence. I only want you to see its consequence. A cry for help in the middle of a storm is not a sign of failure. It is the declaration that your soul understands strength is not in standing alone, but in reaching out. No one taught Peter how to structure prayer in the moment he sank. He simply called my name, and that alone was enough for me to touch him. So it is for you when you breathe, "Help me." Even if the words are messy, unpolished, unworthy of sacred tone, I still receive them and respond. For I do not rescue perfect souls. I rescue souls who know that silence will kill them if they continue to keep it. Learn from that step. My child, I do not ask you to be steady before you speak. I ask you to call on me when your soul begins to sink. I do not want you to wait until you understand the storm before coming to me. I want you to open your mouth while the waves are still crashing. Silence is the cord that binds you to the darkness. But a cry for help, even brief, even trembling, is the blade that cuts it. Your soul does not need radiant light. It only needs a faint glimmer to remember the light still exists. And when you remember, I will do the rest. There are souls who think that to hear me, they must witness great signs, feel spiritual lightning, or endure crises strong enough to force them to their knees. But I am not the storm uprooting everything you see. I am the subtle wind threading through each leaf, turning the entire forest without anyone hearing from afar. When your soul is drowning in fear, the voice within you grows so loud that every word of mine becomes a whisper lost in the background. You think I am silent, but in truth, it is fear screaming in your ear. I wait until you sit down, not to prove my power, but so that my voice will not blend with the echo of your panic. Like Elijah on Mount Horeb, he waited for me in the strong wind, in the earthquake, in the fire, because he assumed I would dwell only in the grand and dramatic. He had seen enough catastrophe to know the world could be shaken at any moment, but he had not yet learned to recognize me in peace. I did not come in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire. I came in a gentle whisper, 1 Kings 19, not because I am weak, but because I am inviting the soul to step out of its own inner storm. I do not need to shout to be heard. I want you to quiet the voice of fear so peace can enter. That stillness is not empty, it is the space I place between you and the darkness, so that you may know what touches you is life and not turmoil. When you are tense, you think I have abandoned you. You knock with hurried prayers and then accuse me of not answering. But you do not realize that my voice does not mix with the words you shout from a heart lacking trust. I speak when your heart stops trying to control. I speak when your soul stops demanding explanations for everything. I speak when you no longer try to force me to fit your own plans. My silence is not punishment, it is an invitation. Lay down your fear. Only when you set the burden down will you realize my voice is not rigid or angry, but a small stream dripping into the cracked desert within you. I do not impose myself on you. If I desired to force you, I would have torn open the door of your soul the day you first lost your innocence. I could pour my presence over your entire being like fire and light, forcing you to your knees without a spark of will. But I chose another way. I speak like one who knocks lightly on an old wooden door, long shut. I do not break. I do not invade. I do not seize control of the soul. I stand outside not because I am distant, but because the door can only be opened from within. I do not place my voice on the surface of your mind, but deep in the place where your heart knows it cannot live alone. My stillness is the mirror reflecting your soul. When you hear nothing, you think I have vanished. But in truth, it is the moment you discover you are hearing only your own voice, and you begin to discern what is mine. like a person stepping away from a noisy square to hear their heartbeat again. You must step out of the thoughts that have blanketed your soul through many long seasons. I do not want you to live on shallow words of entertainment. I want you to learn to recognize me like underground water, silent yet strong, unseen yet nourishing the entire forest. For a soul that can hear me in stillness is a soul that darkness will never rule with the noise of the world. When the soul tries to control everything, you read my words as commands of domination. You put me in the posture of a demand maker, a distributor of quotas, a giver of conditions by which you must prove your worth. But my eyes do not see you as a project, and my words are not written for you to perform through exhausting procedures. I speak so you may know there is a path without the jagged edges you carve for yourself. The obedience you mistake for a lock upon your freedom is simply a return to the rhythm of life already woven into your soul from the day it was formed. I do not add laws to your burden. I unweave what you call responsibility, but is in truth anxiety dressed in religious clothing. One who places themselves in my hands is not someone straining to comply, but someone releasing their own will so the cloak of peace may settle over their heart like oil soaking into fabric, quiet, effortless, enduring. There are souls who have learned to measure my words by emotion. When they hear what pleases them, they call it guidance. When they hear what challenges them, they call me harsh. They forget that a house built on rock is not because I want them to labor painfully over every foundation stone, but because the storm will come whether they wish it or not. I speak not to sabotage your dreams, but to protect you from fragile fantasies that cannot withstand the winds of this world. My words are often simple, brief, unadorned like a soft knock on a doorframe when the night grows late, not waking the whole street, only waking the one who is still awake but trapped in their own doubts. You do not need to understand every sentence to follow me. You only need to believe that each word I speak holds life. Even if it does not appear in the form you expected, that life is not meant to restrain you, but to widen your vision beyond the limits of your own control. I see how you try to grasp countless paths in your life and call it responsibility. You plan like a builder, holding each brick with bare hands, refusing to trust that the master builder has already prepared the foundation. But I do not want you to become a wanderer lost in a maze of your own making. I want you to understand that my word is a compass, not a chain. When I tell you to stop, it is not because I withhold good from you, but because I see the thorns hidden in the dark. When I tell you to step forward, it is not because I need you to complete my plan, but because you need life to flow through you, so you do not become a cracked vessel, dried from trying to fill itself. As the right key turns, a hardened lock, not because the door is weak, but because it was waiting for the precise signal to open, obedience aligns my will with your steps. And what you once called sacrifice becomes the moment the lock is released. My child, souls that crave control often assign motives to me. They imagine I am testing, demanding, placing conditions to prove faithfulness. But I am not playing a game of chess with you. I am not weighing whether you deserve for me to grant you life. I speak because I know every pathway of your soul, the untamed mountains, the valleys you are afraid to enter, and the winds that a single small decision can turn into a storm. If I wanted to control you, I would never have given you freedom. I could silence the sky, still the sea, stop the trembling of the earth, yet I do not do this to your soul, because true love does not imprison, it invites. My word is not a fence, but a road. When you choose to listen, darkness loses its right to hold power over those places within you that once remained shut because of fear. Like a person learning to float for the first time, what holds them up is not their muscles, but the letting go of the tension that only makes them sink faster. So it is with me when I speak. I do not ask you to thrash about to prove anything. I simply ask you to lay your weight upon the surface of trust. You do not need to understand how the water holds you. You only need to accept that it can. With me. Obedience is never a whip, it is a rhythm of breathing. If you hold my word as a burden, you will shrink back every time you hear my voice. But if you hold my word as an open space for your soul, you will find each step growing lighter because the weight has already been set down. Some wait for me to explain everything before they move. They ask me why. They ask me where. They ask me when. They ask what will happen if they fail, and each of those questions becomes a cord pulling them into the land of delay. You believe slowing down to understand is always wisdom. But not all wisdom comes from analysis. Sometimes, wisdom is putting your foot down on the ground I have prepared. Even when your eyes have not yet seen the path, I have never asked you to grasp the entirety of my plan before you walk. I only ask you to trust that my word will never lead your soul into a place of self-destruction. You do not need to know all of the future. You only need to know that where you are placing your feet is not an abyss, but the palm of my hand. Obedience does not grow from perfect prayers. It grows from those moments when you rise while my word has not yet fully filtered through your reasoning. Like Samuel when he heard the call in the night. The boy did not know who was calling him. He did not understand the meaning of that sound. Yet he rose and replied, "Here I am." It was his response that opened the door for further revelation. Had Samuel waited until everything was explained, there would have been no prophet by that name in history. So it is with you. I am not trying to test your intelligence. I am inviting you into a land where faith is the only key that opens the gate. Not because I wish to see if you are worthy, but because the enemy controls those who move only after they see proof, while I lead those who act because life has already been written into them from the beginning. You may ask, what if I am wrong? But you must understand that mistakes made on the road of obeying me are not the same as mistakes made on the road of self-satisfaction. If you step out because you heard my voice, I will correct your steps as one who teaches a child to walk without anger, without harsh reproach, without abandonment. I am not the suspicious gatekeeper waiting for you to slip so that I can slam the door of doubt in your face. I am the one who extends my hand when you waver, not allowing your hesitation to become the excuse that turns you away from life. What paralyzes you is not the risk of being wrong, but the fear of judging yourself. That fear freezes you into silence, and you rename that stillness, waiting for the right time. But my child, the right time is the moment I speak. Every other moment is merely the deception of delay. Like Israel standing before the Red Sea, they were not told, "Wait for the water to recede." I told them to step. The sea did not open a path and then demand that they walk. The path appeared as they set their feet upon what seemed impossible. Had they stood there waiting to understand how I would make a way, they would have died on the shore amid the screams of their enemies. Spiritual life does not unfold like an equation that needs a solution. It unfolds like breathing that requires action. You cannot say, "When I understand, I will breathe." You must breathe first, and life follows. In the same way, you follow my word first, and the outcome belongs to me, not to your calculations. Many souls imagine that rising is a duty that demands strength. But strength does not come from bracing your body against the storm. Strength comes from a soul that knows I am its refuge. Rising is not posturing like a warrior. It is like a seed whose shell cracks simply because the light has called its name, not because it understands the laws of photosynthesis, but because its very nature is made to respond to the sun. When I speak to you, I am touching the deepest part of your being, the part that belonged to me before the world laid its conditions upon your heart. You do not need a perfect argument to stand. You only need to recognize that the stillness within is already telling you, my voice has reached you. There are souls who carry on their shoulders the burden of achievement. They imagine that I see them through the measuring rods of this world, how many things they have done, how many sins they have avoided, how many victories they have gained in the eyes of others. They forget that before the world ever knew their name, I knew their first breath before they understood the meaning of the word success. I was already shaping the first folds of their hearts. I have never defined you by report cards, by praises, or by the moments you surpassed others. I define you with a simple question when I call. Do you turn like dry ground waiting for the first rain? It does not need to prove itself worthy. It simply allows the first drops to soak into its cracked body, not because it has done anything great, but because it is ready. You think the rain must be strong enough to prove its worth, but rain only has to touch the earth to begin life. So it is with your soul. Willingness does not produce thunder. It merely opens a narrow gap through which light may fall. And that very gap is what transforms the entire inner landscape. Some ask me, then what if I am weak? What if all I can bring you is half a prayer, a trembling hand, an unsteady step, my child? I do not wait for a soul to step out perfect. I wait for a soul that knows how to open the door. I have never required you to be a fertile field before welcoming the rain. I only desire that you do not seal your heart with the cement of pride and fear. You think I choose the strong, but it is those who feel powerless who often become the places where I do my greatest works, because they do not build temples to their own willpower. They allow me to lay the first stone, like the first leaf that falls. It does not fall to prove that autumn has come. It falls because its time is full. No one notices it. No one applauds. No one records it. Yet that very falling marks the beginning of a change of season to which the entire forest must yield. Your willingness does not need a crowd to see it in order to be meaningful. When you say yes in silence, I hear. When you turn back in tears, I see. When you choose me instead of compromise, I record it as one notes a seed placed in the soil before the rains. No proud testimony is required. No stage lights. No heroic image, only a heart that knows how to open. Do not think that willingness is a small step incapable of bringing change. Every awakening begins with a decision no one sees. Every spiritual journey opens from a single moment when the soul dares to step beyond the cord of hesitation. I do not seek those who can run the farthest. I seek those who will take the first step. For the first step, trembling though it may be, is the key that breaks the fangs of paralysis. I do not wait for you to sign a contract with perfection. I only wait for you to step into my reality, where everything I have prepared can only unfold for the soul willing to receive it. There are souls who want to reach obedience through justification, as though I needed you to present reasons, achievements, or superiority for me to bless you. But obedience does not operate through explanation. It operates through recognition. A violinist learning for the first time does not produce a concerto. They simply place their finger on the string at the right moment and listen to the gentle quiver of sound. That very vibration, fragile as a first breath, opens the path toward harmony. You imagine that I demand from you an entire piece of music, while I only wait for you to press one finger onto the proper string at the moment I call. Obedience is not founded on rank, not founded on abundance, not founded on how ready you believe yourself to be. Obedience is the act of recognizing that my voice is coming, even if it is as light as wind passing through the leaves. When the violinist is inexperienced, they do not try to force the instrument into submission by strength. They place their finger in the right position and let the sound arise on its own. The soul that knows obedience is the same. It does not strain, does not compete, does not attempt to prove. It simply listens and responds. And that very response, though simple, carries spiritual weight, like a door opening into the reality I have prepared. Some think obedience is reserved for saints, for souls that have passed every trial and reached the summit of morality. But my child, the one who plays the first note is not a master. They are simply someone who believes the sound will come when they place their hand on the right string. Obedience does not require you to be perfect before you step forward. Obedience is the action of placing your foot into a new space and trusting that I will create the rhythm for your next step. When you hear me, and do not delay, you no longer ask, "Perhaps I am not good enough," but simply say, "I have heard, and I will step." I do not require anything more than this. A subtle reference, Luke 1:38, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord, let it be to me according to your word." Those were not the words of a soul who understood every path ahead. They were the words of a young woman standing before what she could not fully comprehend, but whose heart knew how to recognize. She did not argue about feasibility, did not compare herself, did not search for someone to replace her. She simply placed her finger upon the vibrating string, the string I touched, and history was rewoven from that agreement. Not because she was strong, but because she knew the sound would arise when she placed her hand where I called. When you obey at the right moment, you are not proving you have value. You are stepping into my frequency. Just as a musical composition does not need the musician to explain why each note falls where it does, it simply needs to resound in the right rhythm, with the right measure. I do not examine whether you have adequately prepared. I look at whether your soul recognizes my voice at the hour I call. For there are voices of mine that sound only once, not to test you, but to usher you into a new realm of grace. The longer you hesitate, the weaker that voice becomes, not because I draw away, but because your heart has surrendered its authority to hesitation. There are souls who think obedience is a dramatic burst, a powerful decision, a sudden leap, a tearful promise that heaven will answer with miracles. But obedience does not arrive with thunder. It comes like warmth, soaking into the soil after rain, like an underground stream that needs no display. Impulse pushes you forward for a single moment. Stability carries you through a lifetime. And I do not seek souls that flare up once. I seek souls that remain where I have placed them, even if no one sees. In that remaining there is no instant glory, but there is a living current as steadfast as roots, gripping deep earth, needing no applause, fearing no contempt. A stable soul does not ask, "When will I see results?" It asks, "How must I keep your rhythm?" Like a mature musician who does not rely on fleeting emotion to create music, but on the tempo their hands have practiced through countless unnoticed hours. Obedience does not come from momentary bursts of zeal. It comes from the long days when you keep walking though you see no destination. From the evenings when you lower yourself and say, "I will still do what was spoken because it is what you have said." Like soil, though trampled, quietly prepares the seed. An obedient soul does not resist every challenge, but transforms challenge into nourishment for its roots. Stability is never paralysis. It is deliberate rhythm. The watchman stands still, not because he has fallen asleep, but because he knows the position he guards. The gardener does not till the earth endlessly to prove he is working. He knows when to touch and when to leave it be. The obedient soul is the same. It does not chase miracles, but stands in the place I have called it, because it knows miracles are not born of haste, but from the precision of the hour I choose. When you are stable in me, you do not need to force a reason, for when I see that stability, I know I can place upon your shoulders the gentle weight of the kingdom without breaking you. Souls who chase explosive moments often burn out quickly. They run after emotion. They begin brilliantly, but fade when trial refuses to bend. They are like the one who sows seed on stone, rejoicing when the sprout rises for a few days, but losing heart when the sun dries the tender grass. Because the sprout has no deep root, the light ceases to be a friend and becomes a creditor. But a stable soul, like soft earth, tempered by many rains, is not harmed by the light. It welcomes the sun in peace, because it understands that light does not destroy, light only tests what has taken root. Obedience is root, not leaf. Leaves provoke praise, roots provoke my trust. My child, I work through stability, not spectacle. When I look upon the one I choose, I do not seek someone standing atop a mountain shouting, I am ready. I seek the soul that bows its head in the valley, setting the next stone upon the step I have laid. Though no one knows they are building a path, I do not entrust the work of heaven to the soul that only knows how to leap, but to the soul that knows how to stand firm when the winds change. Obedience is not an answer within a single day. It is the life of an entire lifetime, not the cry of passion at the beginning, but the steady stride when everyone else has forgotten the original vision. Sometimes stability appears as silence. Outsiders may think you are doing too little. They believe that slow results are failure. But I see the steps you do not boast of, the choices you keep hidden, the moments you remain calm without collapsing, the occasions when you choose me instead of emotion. That is stability. No one sees it, but I do. And when the time comes, I use that stability as the foundation for the work I have prepared. Great doors are not hung on thin nails. They require sturdy hinges. A stable soul is the firm hinge by which I open heavens you once thought were not meant for you. My child, continuous obedience is not stubbornness. It is the habit of a heart that knows I do not change my mind according to the winds of the world. When you are rooted, you no longer ask, am I missing another opportunity, you ask? Have I kept the rhythm with you? The world teaches you to leap, to shift, to pivot, to seize, but the kingdom teaches you to stand in peace, to wait for the moment I speak, because the grain does not ripen by force, it ripens because the soil has reached its season. I look for souls who know how to become soil, who know how to endure rain, to hold the warmth of the sun, to protect the seed through the long night. When I find souls like these, I do not ask if they are talented, I ask if they are steady. Some say, but I have waited so long. They do not know that waiting is the thickest layer of the forging. The ancient tree does not grow by shouting to the rain, come more, come faster. It simply opens its roots, and rain comes in its time. A stable soul does not wait for a miracle in order to stand. It stands so that I may sow the miracle. When you become the ground, no longer the one who runs chasing timing, you will see that I have already given you a place. Not a place of fleeting glory, but of endurance that others may lean upon when they are weak. There was a time when you believed that the goal of obedience was to earn the miracle, as though I were the dispenser of rewards for those who are patient enough, zealous enough, disciplined enough. But when stability takes root in the soul, obedience ceases to be a path toward the miracle. Obedience becomes the space where I may move without you interfering, like soil matured by countless seasons of wind and rain. It no longer asks how many sprouts it must produce. It simply opens itself for the seed to fall and lets the light do the rest. The miracle does not come because the soil tries to force the plant to grow, but because the soil has become a place I trust where the roots can go deep. So it is with the soul when it stops searching for the outcome. It becomes the place where the outcome happens on its own. Spiritual maturity does not arrive when you gather more experiences or knowledge, but when you are no longer the center of your obedience. When you are stable in me, you begin to see that you no longer have to hold the rhythm. I hold the rhythm. You no longer have to look ahead to determine what to do. I place the assignment into each step you take. Just as a candle does not try to create its flame, it simply remains in the place I set it, and the flame speaks the rest. A soul becomes an instrument when it understands that its existence in my hand is enough to create spiritual movement, even if it does not try to leave any mark for the world to see. I do not search for souls full of ideas, full of strategies, full of plans, full of spiritual ambition. I search for souls who can remain still in my will. For the instrument does not negotiate with the hand that holds it. The instrument does not ask for explanations or present demands. The hammer does not insist on knowing why I drive a particular nail into the plank. It simply allows me to lift it. The craftsman does not choose a tool for its brilliance, but for its fit to the purpose of the hand. A soul in me becomes a silent tool that I can place anywhere in misery or in joy, where no one understands or where every eye is watching. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and only say, "Place me where you need," you have entered the kingdom of maturity. There was a time when you thought becoming an instrument was unworthy of service if it lacked title, lacked prestige, lacked something grand. But my child, I weave my work through small pieces the world never notices. The Samaritan woman was not a preacher, yet she brought an entire city to me, not because she prepared a speech, but because she did not try to create anything. She simply spoke what I had touched within her soul. The miracle does not come from charisma, it comes from presence. My presence in a soul that has let go of control, that understands stability is not to endure, but to become foundation. When you become an instrument, you no longer need to know what you are doing in the eyes of the world. They call you weak when you keep peace. They call you unambitious when you refuse to compete. They call you naive when you trust me in the night. But I know that you have stepped out of their game. You are not an actor on their stage. You are an instrument in my hand, releasing the tones I choose. The maturity of the soul is not measured by how many admire it, but by how fully it can fall silent so that I may speak through it. Your words cease to be your own. They become my heartbeat passing through you. And though the listener may not know the source of the current, they still find life in it. That is when the miracle no longer comes from your searching, but from you simply being yourself in me, not because you have reached a higher level, but because you are no longer living for yourself. I do not use souls who want to carve their traces into the earth. I use souls who forget their footprints and hold only one desire: to let me walk. When you understand that everything I do through you is for other souls, for other times, for lands that have not yet seen the light, you will no longer fear being not enough. For the instrument does not need to be enough, it only needs to be in the hand of the craftsman. There was a time when you believed that to reach the position I wanted for you, you had to busy yourself searching for your mission, like someone running with a lantern trying to find where the light is needed. You thought you had to collect signs, affirmations, important encounters to prove you were on the right path. But when the soul becomes an instrument, you do not hunt for a place to shine, you simply remain where I place you. For that very place is already a corridor of my kingdom. Like the mustard seed in the soil, it does not seek a garden to prove its worth, yet it still sprouts in the appointed season. Mission is not a goal to chase. Mission is the air you breathe when you are in me. Like the heartbeat that does not need an audience to continue. Joseph did not pursue his dream, the dream pursued him. When sold into slavery, he did not explain to me, "Now is the time to fulfill my destiny." He simply kept faith. Like a musician, keeping time, though the song has not yet begun. In Potiphar's house, he did not demand a promise, he simply worked with peace. In the prison, he did not place expectations, he simply held responsibility. The world saw that silence as failure, but I saw a hand upon which I could lay the weight of heaven. And when the appointed time arrived, he did not need to argue or prove anything. I opened one door, and every other door stood still before him, not because he had become powerful, but because he had become the instrument I intended. When you live in your calling, you no longer need to know where that calling is taking place. Like a musician in an orchestra, not looking around to see whether the audience is paying attention. They keep the tempo because the score requires them to keep it. A soul that places itself in me acts in the same way, not because it thinks it is doing something great, but because it knows that every small gesture is weaving a song that no one has heard yet. You do not need spotlights to know the melody is sounding. You only need to know who is holding your instrument. When you let me be the master of the music, every face in the hall becomes secondary. Because the sound you create no longer belongs to you, it belongs to me and to the souls I desire to touch. There are people who want to work for me, but do not want to live in me. They look for tasks to prove their worth, but when the task is gone, their hearts are empty. An instrument is never abandoned, because it does not attach its value to what it does. It attaches its value to the hand that holds it. Joseph did not become an instrument because he was wiser than the Egyptians. He became an instrument because he never left me. Even when every external sign seemed to say that I had left him, when no light shone into the dungeon, he did not chase after the light. He allowed that very darkness to become the ground where I brought forth comfort, justice, and preparation. When you live in your calling, every ordinary act carries heavenly weight. A gentle word you offer to the weak can become a word of release for a soul standing on the brink of despair. The way you hold your feet back from shortcuts can become a silent testimony to those who have lost their sense of direction. You may not see yourself changing the world, yet the world tilts slightly around you because I am moving through the stability of your soul. People will only realize it later when they ask, why is it that when I am near you, I feel at peace, but you never tried to make them calm? You simply walked in my rhythm. And this is what I want you to understand. Deeper than effort or fighting spirit, an instrument does not choose its own performance. It does not plead, please use me in a more glorious place. It simply rests in the craftsman's hand, knowing that wherever that hand places it, that place is right. When you live in your calling, you will no longer say, what are you using me to do, but rather, what do you want to do through me wherever I place you? You do not treat it as temporary. You see it as the very place I have chosen for heaven to touch earth through you. And when you understand this, anxiety disappears. Calling is no longer an arena. Calling becomes breath. There are souls who think that in order to become an instrument I use, they must refine themselves into something precious, sharpen their abilities, prove themselves worthy. But the truth is, an instrument is not transformed by its own nature, but by the hand that holds it. A shepherd's staff never called itself a cymbal. It was only a staff rough, weathered by sun and rain, accustomed to brushing against wild grass. Yet when I placed it in Moses' hand, the staff was no longer just a staff. It became visible proof that I was present among a trembling people. It did not need to be beautiful, carved, or praised. It only needed to rest in my hand at the moment I wanted it to be raised. Many souls want to be used, but they want to be used in what they have chosen. They want me to lift them up when people are watching, as if recognition from the crowd were a spiritual seal. But my child, I do not seek instruments that require the light. I seek instruments that are not afraid of the dark, because darkness is where my light is most clearly seen. When Moses stood before the Red Sea, with a ruthless army behind him and an impossible wall of water before him, he did not need to outline a strategy. He only had to raise his staff according to my word. The sea did not part because he was clever. The sea parted because he was standing exactly inside my hand. Exodus 1:4-1-6, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. This is not the story of a hero, it is the story of an instrument. My hand moves in the one who does not want to shine, but wants to submit. Moses had trembled, had said he was not capable, had refused the calling because he felt too weak. But that was precisely where I chose him. His weakness became the space through which my power could pass without having to compete with human reason or self-confidence. An instrument that knows it is not enough will never restrain me. An instrument that thinks it is enough is the one that keeps me from touching it. Once you understand this, you will stop asking, How do I change the world and begin to ask, what do you want to do through me today? For there are days when I will have you part the sea, and there are days when I only want you to stand still, so that the people may see that I am the Redeemer. There are days I tell you to raise your hand, and days I tell you to lower it. A mature instrument does not analyze the sequence of actions, it simply listens and follows. Like a string that knows how to hold the right tension, not too tight, not too loose, so that the sound rings true at the frequency I desire. Not your sound, not your glory, my sound. I know there are moments when you think that to act, you must fully understand. You want me to explain first. You want to see the miracle before you dare to step. But the miracle always precedes the explanation, not to confuse you, but to show you that my movement does not rest on your logic. When you stand before the sea, you will not be briefed on which direction the wind will blow from, at what angle the waters will rise, or how long the path will stay dry. I only say, lift up your hand. That is, I do not ask you to calculate. I ask you to trust. And that trust, when it springs from a heart that is stable and not seeking personal glory, becomes the doorway for heaven to touch earth. If you live for results, you will be disappointed whenever you do not see the waters part. But if you live for the place I have put you, you will be at peace, even while the sea remains unbroken. For an instrument knows that power does not originate in itself. It does not need to do something extraordinary to be extraordinary. The moment I touch it, it is already enough. You do not need to burn yourself out to light the way. I am the light. You do not need to stir the ocean. I am the one who parts the sea. When you stand in my will, even what appears immovable will bow to serve my purpose. There are moments when I place you in the midst of the crowd, and everyone sees me through you. But there are also seasons when I place you in quietness, like a staff in the shepherd's hand, unnoticed, unremarked, unseen. That is not abandonment. That is when I am shaping you into an instrument that will not tremble when it faces the waves. The staff does not tremble before the sea because it has grown familiar with the shepherd's hand. So it is with the soul if it has learned to know me in days without miracles. It will not shake when I call it into its decisive hour. When you become an instrument, you do not need to see the road open ahead. You only need to see the hand that holds you. If I bring you to the Red Sea, it means I have already prepared the wind. If I place you in a chaotic generation, it means I have already prepared my word. If I keep you standing in a place no one sees, it means I am deepening your roots before I lift you up. Do not be quick to demand the leading role. Simply remain in the true place of an instrument. For wherever I lay my hand on you, whether on a mountaintop or in a desert, that very place becomes the doorway of miracles. There are souls who believe that standing up is a great milestone, a moment of declaration, an earth-shaking turn of life, where both heaven and earth must take notice. But standing up does not sound a trumpet. Standing up is the rhythm of life, when the soul understands that I am still calling. Even when no one is watching, you do not stand up to prove that you have changed. You stand up because your heart begins to understand that remaining in the darkness is no longer fitting for a soul that has known the light. Like a person who rises in the morning not because they see a miracle in the sun, but because the body recognizes that life continues. Standing up is not an event. Standing up is the spiritual heartbeat of your soul. You have grown accustomed to seeing standing up as a turning point only after extreme sorrow, extreme disappointment, extreme failure. Do you then attempt to regain life? But a mature soul does not wait for the edge of the cliff before returning to the light. It stands up every day, like someone who knows that peace is not found in emotion but in faithfulness. When the sun has not yet shone brightly, when the birds are still few, when no one knows how meaningful that moment is, the soul simply opens its eyes and breathes, not because it sees the future clearly, but because it believes that this breath still lies in my hands. Standing up is the reflex of a soul that knows I have never departed. The world teaches you to stand up only when there is a reason, when your career collapses, when your family breaks, when people walk away, when you lose everything. But I teach you to stand up when nothing has happened, when all is calm, when you think you do not need me, when you have not yet gone astray. For standing up in peace is the act that prevents the soul from drifting. You do not need to wait for storms to seek shelter. You do not need to wait for drought to seek water. Those who know me do not wait until their soul withers to ask for life. They drink every day, sip every drop, like a tree that keeps water in its roots so it may remain peaceful before the dry season. Within the habit of standing up, you will gradually see that transformation does not come from a special day, but from the days no one remembers. A long-distance traveler does not celebrate each step. They simply walk, not because the road is easy, but because they know every small step moves them further away from the place where they were once imprisoned. A soul that knows me does not see standing up as a dazzling moment. It sees it as the daily pulse of a child who has chosen to return. And I, the one who sees every small step, do not ask you to run. I simply place my hand upon your shoulder and say, take one more step. There will be days you stand up boldly, full of confidence. There will be days you stand up weakly, trembling, unsure you have the strength. But standing up is not measured by confidence. It is measured by willingness. Like a person learning to breathe in the night when anxiety comes, not because they have won, but because they know that if they do not inhale, the body will fade. So it is with the soul. Not standing up is withdrawing the breath from its own life. Standing up is breathing me in. No strong words are needed. No grand declaration, only the act of placing your feet on the ground and knowing in your heart that something greater than fear is waiting. There will be those who look at you and say, so that is your standing up. Nothing has changed. But you do not stand up to prove anything. You stand up because you understand sleeping in darkness too long dulls the memory of light. One who stands only when there is crisis does not know that their soul has become accustomed to night. But one who continually stands in peace knows that light is home, not a destination. They do not let darkness teach them how to sleep. They let me teach them how to live. Do not think that obedience is measured only by great actions or explosive moments. Obedience is first the steady pace, not rushed, not driven by display, not demanding instant results. Like the first light of day, which does not tear apart the night but slips through the curve of the window, spreads into each corner of the room before illuminating the whole. So too is your obedience. It arrives in stillness, seeps into the soul, gradually melting fear without the need for noise. Over long days, you will see that change does not come from a heroic gesture, but from choosing to take one more step, even when the heart is heavy. There will be times you ask yourself, why can I not advance quickly? Why can I not reach where I long to be right now? But my child, I am the one who created rhythm. No symphony begins with its highest note. No song is composed solely of climaxes. The musician knows how to preserve quiet between keys, how to place the smallest notes in the right place, so that when the great crescendo arrives, the whole sky is warmed. Obedience in small steps is those low notes, not impressive to the world, but the backbone of everything I am weaving in you. Many souls lose peace because they believe they must reach a clear spiritual achievement before I will accept them. They wait for the day they are strong enough, holy enough, repentant enough, before returning. But I do not ask you to bring me treasure to prove your worth. I only ask you to take a step when the ground before you is still uncertain. I do not require you to run into the light. I only ask you not to turn your back on it. Every small step, though trembling, is obedience when you place that step in me. When you choose to walk step by step, You are learning how to listen, like one walking in fog. Every step they place is a declaration. I believe there is a path. You do not need to see the end of the journey. You only need to know that I am walking beside you. I do not push you out of the darkness with a violent shove. I lead you through it with steady steps, like still water rising when rain comes. Obedience does not need to prove itself. It simply fills the driest places of the soul. Do not underestimate the uneventful days. Those are the days when I teach you endurance. Those are the days you choose to open your eyes when your mind wants to close them. Those are the days you say, I still believe, when no emotion lifts you. Those are the days without tears, without dazzling revelation, without praise from the world, yet you do not abandon me. I see those moments, like the first trace of light on the wall. They are small, but they cannot be stopped. When light arrives, it does not ask darkness for permission. It simply advances. My child, if a symphony loses its small notes, it becomes distorted. If the sun ignores its faintest morning light, dawn would break apart. And if your soul wishes only to leap without walking step by step, you will carry exhaustion into the very place where I want you to rest. I do not ask you to leap across the sea. I only ask you to place your foot upon the water like Peter, while his eyes were still on me, not because he had the ability to walk on the waves, but because he obeyed the call. My child, you often think that spiritual strength is something that appears in a sudden burst when you taste a miracle, when you are rescued from the abyss, when you feel my presence like fire in the night. But a mature soul is not born from those rare moments. It is forged in stretches of silence, where you continue to do what is right even when your emotions do not cheer you on, where you choose to open your eyes each morning even though the night before was weary, where you continue to pray even when you do not hear an answer immediately. Just as the body is trained through repetition each time you lift the weight, each long run on an empty road, the soul is trained through small but consistent acts of obedience, not because they impress the world, but because they break the habit of surrendering within you. My child, spiritual resistance is not the ability to withstand great attacks, but the internal stability before the small, constant ones. You will not be crushed by a sudden storm if your heart has already learned to stand against gentle winds. The souls that collapse easily are those who only seek me when everything is burning. The resilient souls are those who seek me before the flames ever begin. Look at life. You can remember a long stretch of tension lasting weeks, where you were worn down by work, stung by unpleasant words from co-workers, met with silence from loved ones, and felt as though you were standing alone. You did not go through a disaster, yet your soul was eroded bit by bit. It is in that very moment that obedience becomes a muscle. You refuse to let fear guide you. You refuse to let bitterness feed you. You refuse to let silence turn into stone. You still choose to turn your eyes toward me. Choose a simple prayer. Choose a kind action. Choose a moment of listening. That is resistance. Obedience is not a reaction when you are weak. It is a preparation before weakness arrives. Just as a person does not wait for the body to collapse before training, your soul must not wait for storms before seeking me. You may feel foolish saying, I will pray today even though everything is calm, but like one who lifts small stones to prepare for the heavy one. Obedience in peaceful days is the medicine that keeps the soul from collapsing when difficulty comes. I see many souls who only come to me when their strength is gone, not because I do not receive them, but because they have lost the ability to hear my voice in the smallest steps. And when I call them to stand in the middle of the storm, they no longer know whose voice they are hearing. You ask me, how do I know if my obedience is strong enough? I tell you, you do not measure obedience by feeling. You measure obedience by consistency. Even when you do not feel me, even when everything in you wants to quit, You still do what is right not because you are certain, but because you trust. What makes a long-distance runner not strong legs, but the will to lift the 100th step as if it were the first? Likewise, a resilient soul is one that does the right thing for the 1,000th time, as if it is still responding to the very first invitation. Darkness does not fear a soul that burns bright for 1 hour. Darkness fears a soul that glows day after day. Because just when it thinks you are tired, you rise once more. Continuous obedience also breaks the power of subtle temptations. The enemy does not always strike with swords. Often it strikes with delay. It whispers, "Pray tomorrow. Repent tomorrow. Return tomorrow." It knows it does not need to pull you into the deepest sin. It only needs to keep you still. But obedience is like a muscle if you stop using it. It atrophies. What I teach you is not be strong once, but be faithful every time. There are days when you read only a short passage of my word, like a sip of water. There are days when you do nothing more than breathe deeply while fear surges. There are days when you simply say, "I still trust." You imagine that means nothing, but these are the soul's exercises. These are the muscles. And then, when a truly difficult day arrives, sickness, loss, betrayal, accusation, the silence of those you thought loved you, the soul that has been trained will stand by instinct. It will not fall into the abyss, because it has learned to stand on every narrow step. It will not cry out, "Where am I?" because it has heard me in every small movement. It will not chase miracles, because perseverance itself has become the miracle. Continuous obedience turns the soul into one who lives in me, not merely one who runs to me. My child, here is a secret few understand. Spiritual resistance is not something I drop from heaven. It is something I teach you to build in the ordinary rhythm of your days. No one becomes my witness through a single night of prayer. No one is used in my kingdom through a single vow. I use the souls who rise every day, like someone who breathes air back into the embers until they glow again, not with a single strike, but with steady breaths. Each time you choose obedience instead of giving up, you are saying to darkness, "I do not live by emotion, I live by His word." There are seasons in the spiritual journey when you must struggle to hear, to analyze, to discern whether the voice comes from me or from the echoes of your own fears. But when the soul has passed through its training, when obedience has become its natural breath, you no longer have to argue with yourself every time I call. You no longer need explanations, no longer need to understand the entire story in front of you. Your heart responds like a leaf that knows how to bend with the wind, like a horse familiar with its rider, like the heartbeat that adjusts itself quietly, not because you know everything, but because you have learned enough to trust the one who led you through storms before. That is maturity, not superior intellect, but the consistency of the soul when faced with my word. I watch you step out of the land of arguments and into the land of peaceful action. Before, every word I spoke slowed you down, and you asked, "What if I am wrong? What if I do not understand? What if this is only emotion?" But through the days of patience, through the moments you stood even when your heart was unclear, through the times you believed me even when you could not feel me, something was formed within you, the sensitivity of familiarity. Like a child who lives near the spring and no longer asks why the water is cool, no longer needs to prove the water still flows, they simply drink. So it is a mature soul does not attempt to measure me every time I call, but follows me because it knows I do not change. My child, response is not a reflex born of panic, but a deep union. When I speak to a mature soul, there is no need for thunder, no need for miracles, no need for a forceful urging. A thin ray of light in the mind is enough. A gentle impression in the morning is enough. A fleeting thought in the middle of work is enough. Young souls need proof before they trust. Mature souls trust and then witness the proof. Like a craftsman familiar with his tools, not watching his hands each time, simply working. That response is not an impulsive act. It is the result of years of trust. I trained Abraham in this way. When I told him to leave his homeland, he did not ask, "Where? How far? When will I return?" He simply rose and went. Do you think it was easy? No. It only became easy because trust had surpassed fear. He was not a man without worries. He was a man who laid every reason for worry at my feet. Likewise, the souls that respond are not those who feel nothing. They are those who know that emotion is not the measure of truth. They hear and they go, because they know that I am the source, not the world. And when the soul has learned how to respond, you will begin to notice a change in your everyday life. There is no longer a division between sacred moments and ordinary moments. Every step you take, every word you speak, every action you perform becomes an extension of the voice that lives within you. You no longer need to prepare in order to hear me, because you hear me as you live. Like someone with a trained sense of hearing who does not strain to perceive the wind, the responsive soul does not exert itself to find me, for I have become the rhythm of its inner life. This is not transcendence, it is familiarity. I do not come to you from afar. I am already within the cadence of your breathing. And from this point, the journey moves into a new tier. I no longer call you only to stand in times of hardship. I begin to use you to awaken other souls. You do not respond merely to keep yourself from the darkness. You respond to become a bridge of light. Your response is no longer a private matter. It becomes an echo, a trail of fire spreading to the souls sleeping beside you, like a small lamp that does not count fallen leaves but still lights the whole porch. You do not need to measure your effectiveness. You only need to respond. For every response is a seed I sow. There was a time when you came to me only to be healed, to be soothed, to be lifted from the burdens of the world. You prayed for peace, like a traveler who asks only for shelter in a rainstorm. I gave it to you without reproach, without calculation, because I knew that a wounded soul cannot immediately become a refuge for others. But when you mature in obedience, when you no longer come to me only for protection but to walk with me, I begin to do what you once could not understand. I make you into a flow. You no longer only drink water, you begin to carry water. Life was never designed to stagnate. Still water rots, not because it is poisonous, but because it is held in silence. Grace is the same. When you keep blessing for yourself, your soul grows weary from carrying more than it can bear. You think you hold on so you will not lose it. But I designed the soul according to the laws of light. Only when it radiates does it grow strong. When you obey, you grant me the right to flow through you, not just into you. You become a stream, not a reservoir. And when you are a stream, you do not strain to make the water move. You simply do not obstruct the current. Immature souls always ask, "What must I do to be influential?" But souls matured in obedience understand that influence does not arise from effort, it arises from union with me. When you listen to me, when you follow me, when you respond in the smallest matters, you become like the wind, no visible form, no title. Yet the trees bow their heads whenever you pass. The world loves dazzling actions, deeds that make the multitudes applaud, but I heal through the quietness of life, like an underground spring, needing no proclamation, no proof, yet nourishing the entire field above it. The obedient soul carries a power it does not even realize. My child, remember Naomi and Ruth. Ruth did not try to prove her usefulness. She did not pursue a grand mission. She simply obeyed the small calling in her heart to remain with Naomi, to glean in another's field, to bow herself humbly. No one praised her during the days she bent over to gather fallen grain. No one perceived my purpose in her ordinary steps beneath the sun. Yet within that unadorned obedience, I wove the lineage of David, and from that lineage I brought forth the Savior. She did not seek to become a source. She simply did not close her heart to the call. I did the rest. When obedience becomes life, you will see that what you do is no longer driven by personal desire, but becomes the place where I deliver what the world cannot provide. A word of comfort from you is not merely a word, it is a stream flowing through a fractured stone. A look free of judgment from you is not merely kindness, it is shade from a tree whose roots have grown deep in me. Even your silent actions, refusing revenge, refusing bitterness, choosing forgiveness, or a road I am opening for someone behind you. A soul that carries life does not need to preach. Its presence is already a sermon. You will meet those who ask, "Why are you not exhausted? Why do you not retaliate? Why are you not afraid?" You do not need to answer with philosophy. Your peace is the answer. For the soul that has learned to receive me no longer holds me back. It becomes my body in the world, like a branch joined to the vine. It only needs to keep the sap flowing. It does not need to force fruit into existence. The fruit will arrive in its appointed season. So it is, I do not call you to collect life, but to become a conduit of life. When you walk in such obedience, something remarkable will happen. Those who do not know me will seek you without knowing why. Like birds searching out shade at midday. They do not need to analyze geography. They simply feel that near you there is breathability they do not find elsewhere. It is not because you are innately different, but because I have done my work in you, not to make you a keeper of light, but a doorway of light. Every small act of obedience has opened a path for them, even though you have not tried to guide anyone. There are people in your life who will never read scripture, never understand doctrine, never know how to pray, but they will look at you. They will watch how you move through a weary day, how you remain calm when deadlines burn, how you speak in an argument, how you set the table when someone criticizes you, how you turn back to apologize when you know you have caused hurt. They will not ask you about theology. They will simply ask, "Why do you not collapse as we do?" And that is when your journey becomes the answer. Standing up at the moment I speak does not produce lightning in the sky. It produces small glimmers of light in each daily act, each seemingly trivial decision, yet pulsing with my rhythm. You imagine that witness is the person standing on a platform, recounting the miracles they have seen. But my greatest witnesses are not those who speak much, they are those who walk, like a great pillar in an open field, not telling its own story, yet shading the young trees around it. People do not know how many seasons of wind it has endured, how many droughts, how many times lightning struck. They only know this beneath its shade. They can breathe. When you rise at the moment I speak, your soul becomes that shade, shielding others from the heat they cannot bear. Remember a simple morning you open your eyes in silence. No dream, no sign, no marvel, just a faint tiredness, the usual time, a little resentment about facing a long day. You can stand up, or you can curl into your bed and let the day slip away. But if in that moment you remember me, if you rise without the push of emotion, if you step onto the cold floor like one who understands that the first step matters more than all the ones that follow, then that act is the rising of the soul. No one sees it. No one records it. But I see, for I know that in that moment, you chose me over the heaviness of the flesh. ChatGPT, Kote, my child. On another noon, when you are at work, a colleague may blame you, misunderstand you, or speak words that irritate you. You could respond, Defend yourself, or fall into silence soaked with bitterness. But if you pause for a beat, breathe deeply, not to endure, but to make room for me in your response, that is testimony. People will not praise you for such restraint. Some may even mistake it for weakness. But, my child, the pillar does not need anyone to acknowledge its roots. It only needs to stand. And it is that very standing that keeps the soil from being washed away when heavy rains arrive. There are afternoons when you are tired, when you walk into your home and everyone is busy, tense, carrying their own burdens. You could display your exhaustion, pour fuel into the fire, or retreat to your room in avoidance. But if you slow down, put your bag down, look around, choose to wash the dishes, tidy the living room, or prepare a small meal, not because you must, but because I have taught you that peace does not come from who is right or who is wrong, but from the one who is willing to bear the weight first. Then, in that moment, you are no longer living for yourself. You are becoming the one I use. Many believe that standing up only matters when something dramatic happens, losing a job, falling ill, suffering loss. But I tell you, my child, the daily stand has even greater weight. For those are the steps no one applauds, no one witnesses, no one praises. You stand because of me, not because of an audience. You stand because of my quiet voice in your heart, not because of a fiery sermon. It is these steps of standing day after day, hour after hour, that build the foundation of your soul as firm as rock. And then one day, the very people who have watched you in silence will ask, "How can you live this way?" They do not ask when you are triumphant, but when you stumble and still remain gentle. They do not ask when you are surrounded by support, but when you are isolated and yet unbitter. They do not ask when you are full of energy, but when you are weary and still do not give up. They do not know that the answer is not found in willpower, not in the techniques of coping, but in the moment you stood up the first time when I spoke, and then stood up again when I called once more. There was a time you believed your journey revolved only around personal salvation, you and me, sin and repentance, falling and rising. You saw yourself as a lonely traveler on the road of the Spirit, carrying your burden and your private prayers. But when you learn to respond to me in silence, when you practice small steps, when you stand exactly at the moment I speak, you begin to enter another realm where your actions no longer end with yourself. No intention to serve, no ambition to help, only living in me. And I will turn your life into a hidden spark that touches other souls. There, you realize that light does not know boundaries, it simply shines. And wherever darkness exists, it will seek it. Those who have seen you from afar, those who only know you in ordinary life, at work, at home, among friends, at the market or the cafe, will suddenly fall silent for reasons they cannot express, not because you said anything grand, but because the peace within you exposes the unrest in them, not because you proved anything, but because your refusal to wrestle with the world forces them to ask, "Why must I try to control everything?" I do not use you as a brass trumpet on the square. I use you as a small lamp in a dark room, not loud, not blinding, but enough for someone feeling along the wall to find their way without bruising their hands. My child, souls that sleep are not evil souls. They are simply souls who have lived in darkness long enough to believe that darkness is normal. They are the ones who wake up only to curl themselves back into fatigue, the ones who hear my call and assume it to be the meaningless wind, the ones wounded so long that they no longer believe in comfort. I do not need you to awaken them with threats. I need you to become an invitation. Your presence unangered, unhopeless, unchasing affirmation is the answer I wish to give them. Like a small flame reminding a room that light once existed, you become a memory of heaven in their hearts. I have done this through souls who never knew I was using them. A quiet farmer whose integrity made an entire village realize that honesty is not a luxury. A wife who prayed silently for years until her husband's hardened heart suddenly wanted to soften. A teacher whose gentle eyes, free of judgment, allowed a child to feel they finally had a place in the world. These were not apostles, not public figures, not celebrated. They simply lived in me, and I used them. I wove through their lives threads of light that continued and continued, not through noise, but through endurance. There are souls awakened not because they heard a sermon, but because they witnessed someone endure injustice without becoming a monster. Some return not because they read a scripture, but because they saw someone show mercy to the one the world says deserves condemnation. Some begin to pray not because of fear, but because they saw someone weak who still stood up. I do not need you to act in my place. I need you to be close enough to me for me to act through you. When you are united with me, your testimony is not the story you tell, but the contrast between a peaceful soul and a world obsessed with conquering. My child, you will not know when a sleeping soul begins to awaken. You will hear no thank you, see no ceremony of honor, receive no applause. These souls will remain silent and simply continue watching like a farmer, quietly watching the rain to know when the field is ready. But one day, they will come to you, saying little, only asking, "How do you live without fear?" or "Why do you still believe?" And then, your union with me will answer without philosophy, without self-defense. They will not return because you were persuasive, but because you lived as my witness, gentle, unpretentious, undeniable. One day, you will see the difference between you are doing something for me and I am doing something through you. That turning point does not come from knowledge or practice, but from one true act of letting go. When you stop trying to prove, when you stop straining to be useful, when you no longer anxiously ask whether you are moral enough, strong enough, holy enough, you step into a new land, the land where I act. There, you are simply soft soil, not the seed, not the rain, not the sun, but when the soil is soft, I send the seed. I call the rain. I bring the light. And the miracle happens not because the soil does anything, but because the soil does not resist me. There are souls you meet on the road of life that you assume are mere coincidence, the indifferent coworker, the friend who always complains, the family member whose heart has grown numb, the stranger who glances at you for a moment on a night bus. You do not see the invisible spring that I open within you when you walk in peace, but they see it, not through words, but through the way you are not pulled into their turmoil, through the way you do not live by the fearful logic of the world, through the way you do not react as they once witnessed in others, like an ancient tree standing in strong winds, not trying to resist every gust, but resting upon its deeply planted roots. You become a counter-witness to the restlessness that is wearing them down. My child, there are times I do not let you see the blooming of the fields you have watered, because I know your heart is not yet mature enough to see that bloom without turning it into pride. I remain silent like a gardener who walks through the twilight, letting the rain fall quietly, letting seeds sprout without haste, letting flowers open only when the light is fully ripe. You think your work is to help someone know me, but in truth your work is to be in me. The rest belongs to me. Every soul I awaken is because I touched them through your presence, not because you chose the right words or the right methods. There are moments no one witnesses that are the places where I work the most powerfully. A moment when you are silent instead of responding. A moment when you forgive even though you had the chance to strike back. A moment when you remain still while others try to drag you into a battle that does not belong to you. These moments have no stage lights, no applause, no cheering audience, but it is precisely in those moments that you open the door for me to pass through. My presence in you is like warmth in a winter room. No one sees the source of heat, yet everyone feels it. For me to pour light through your life, you do not need to learn how to persuade. You need to learn how to listen. People have grown too accustomed to noise advice, arguments, provocation, complaints. But light makes no sound. Light simply shines. When you anchor your life in me, every gesture, every small choice, every peaceful breath becomes that light. Not the light of achievements or arguments, but the light of existence, an existence placed in my hands. You do not preach, yet you teach. You do not speak, yet you convince. You do not direct, yet you lead. I do not hand you a trumpet to stir the battlefield. I give you a small lamp placed by the window, so those who are lost can see it and know there is a way home. My child, I do not need you to become a symbol. I need you to become a conduit. A symbol lives in the eyes of the world, but a conduit lives in union with me. A symbol requires spectators, but a conduit requires source. A symbol must maintain an image, but a conduit needs only honesty. When you no longer worry about what people think of your spirituality, you become a vessel without leaks, wide enough for me to fill, quiet enough for me to radiate through. My child, if at this point your heart has gone quiet beneath layers of contemplation, it is not because you are weak, but because I am peeling away the shells that have encased your soul through all those years when you believed silence was safety. I know there are lines you read cautiously, verses where you tilt your head and wonder whether I am truly speaking to you or if it is only the wind brushing through your mind. But if your soul still stirs, if even the smallest longing has not died, then understand this: I am still here. I do not come where there is noise. I come where the heart is ready to listen. The silence you once wore like armor was in truth only a thin mist over your eyes, convincing you that avoidance was the safe option. But silence has never been neutral. It is merely a slow, millimeter by millimeter, step away from the voice calling your name. There are souls exhausted not because of the burdens of life, but because they have gone far too long without speaking to me. Like someone standing in the middle of the sea yet dying of thirst because they do not know the water around them can save them. They do not die of hunger, they die of forgetting. I know you have lived through nights in which you no longer knew who your thoughts were speaking to me, to fear, to the past, or to the emptiness itself. I know you have wanted to call my name but stayed silent, afraid you were unworthy, afraid I would interrogate, afraid I would judge the small choices that stained your soul. But what I want you to understand is this: I do not ask why you fell, I ask whether you want to stand up. I do not need you to prove holiness. I only need you to open a sliver of a door so that I may step in. My child, silence before my voice is not preservation. It is a quiet declaration that you are placing your life into the enemy's hands. Failing to respond to me does not keep you in place. It sets you on a different path without your realizing it. A soul that does not turn back is always moving away, even if it is not walking with its feet, but with its thoughts, habits, emotions, and inner whispers. I have seen so many who believed they were not doing anything wrong, then one day awakened in darkness because they had wandered too far from where the light still shines. Fear keeps them silent. Pride keeps them silent. Exhaustion keeps them silent. And in the end, that silence becomes their new home, a home where I am not present. A soul not joined to me will always be joined to something else, and that something else has never led you to life. I do not wait for you to become clean before I receive you. I wait for you to return so that I may cleanse you. My love is not like the shops of this world that only welcome guests who arrive polished and composed. I welcome you while you are still dusty, still shattered, still trembling in a night no one knows about, still carrying decisions you cannot speak of to anyone. You do not need a long prayer. You do not need a report of the years you forgot me. You only need to open your mouth, even if your first words are, "I'm tired," "I'm hurting," "I'm afraid," or "Please help me." I do not measure the worth of your words by length or grandeur. I measure it by the distance between your heart and the truth. And whether that distance is 1 step or 1,000, as long as you turn toward me, I will walk the rest. My child, I know there are wounds in you without names, fears without shapes, corners of the soul you have never dared to revisit. I do not ask you to name them all. I ask only whether you will allow me to touch them. I have searched for you more times than you imagine. I whispered when you were silent. I nudged when you were asleep. I placed people on your path to remind you that I was still there. But you passed them by because you believed everything I do must arrive like a bolt of lightning, not like a gentle invitation carried on a breeze. I do not compete with noise to win you. I simply stand where you once knew me and wait for you to return. If you ask why I was silent in seasons when you cried out, I will tell you this with the tenderness only I possess. I was silent not because I abandoned you, but because you had grown so accustomed to the world's voices that if I spoke loudly, you would have dismissed me as just another noise. I needed the silence so you would recognize your dependence on other sounds. I needed the silence so you would feel how painful my absence truly is. When you feel lost, it is not because I am far, it is because you have stepped into a place where my voice no longer echoes. You do not hear me not because I stopped speaking, but because you closed the only door through which I could be heard, the door of your heart. But my child, there is no door I cannot touch. As long as you allow me to place my hand upon it, I do not need you to open it wide. I only need a gap small enough for the light to enter. Just as the first ray of light makes one who has lived long in darkness squint, the return to me will also bring pain to your soul. But that pain is not punishment. It is the sign that your spiritual senses are awakening. You have grown too accustomed to endurance. I want you to learn how to live. You have become too familiar with carrying everything on your own. I want you to know how to lean on me. You have become too familiar with silence. I want you to know that even your weakest whisper is enough for me to step inside. So, my child, do not end your journey here as if I have finished speaking. I have never finished speaking to a soul still willing to listen. Carry what you have just read not as a breeze passing by, but as a new heartbeat within your chest. Let each thought weave into every breath, every choice, every step you take, not so that you may become a perfect person, but so that you may become a person who returns. Darkness has never been the final destination for those who still look toward me, and no matter how many years you have lost, how many opportunities, how many times you remain silent, just one word of return, and I will resurrect the entire journey. You do not need to understand everything, you only need to begin. You do not need to be strong, you only need to be sincere. I am waiting for you not because I lack you, but because your soul has never belonged anywhere other than me. Now pray like this, Lord. Help me recognize that the silent moments within my soul are not places of safety, but places where I slowly drift from the life that comes from you. Break this numbness. Do not let me grow so accustomed to darkness that I fear the light. Give me the courage to look directly into my heart and name the dead places that exist there, that I may know prolonged silence is not rest, but the abandonment of myself. Lord, help me understand that your mercy is not a license for me to continue down the wrong path, but a shelter where I may stop before the storm arrives. Help me see that every step I take away from you has consequences, and teach me to turn back before those consequences become chains that bind my soul. Teach me to treasure the time you have opened for me to return, instead of using it as an excuse to delay. Lord, let me not search for beautiful apologies, but seek a sincere return. Help me understand that the step home matters more than a perfect confession, like the prodigal son who could not finish his apology. As long as I rise and return to your house, please wipe the dust of the road from my heart and clothe me again in the garment of one who belongs. Lord, keep me from thinking that you abandon me when I am silent, for it is silence that makes me unable to hear you. Please wait for me like an oil lamp in the night, so that when my eyes open, I will still see the light that never departed. Do not let me fear returning simply because I have slept too long. Lord, help me not turn the time you wait into a reason to continue running. Engrave in my heart the truth that with every day I postpone, the sin within me does not sleep, it grows a little more. Teach me to turn back while my heart is still soft, before it hardens with excuses. Lord, destroy within me the belief that silence is harmless. Help me see clearly that every time I choose not to answer you, I grant the darkness authority over my next steps. Teach me to respond if only with a whispered prayer, if only with a tired breath that says, I need you. Lord, heal the places in my heart that have become so familiar with darkness that the light feels uncomfortable. Gently open my eyelids as a guide opens the cellar door for a child kept too long in the night. Teach me to look at the light not with fear, but with gratitude that the light has continued seeking me. Lord, do not let shame keep me standing outside the door. Remind me that the Father in Luke 15 did not wait for an explanation. He only waited for the child to return. Help me not build walls with words, not hide behind reasons, not wait for the right time, because no time is more fitting than the moment I realize I cannot live without you. Lord, teach me not to seek perfection before I seek you. Help me remember Peter on the waves. He did not have a long prayer. He cried only 3 words, Lord, save me. And you reached out your hand. Give me the courage to speak the simplest, most honest words, so that you may take my hand in the sea of life. Lord, rescue me from the trap of, I will return later, from the enemy's lie that time remains abundant. Help me know that every breath is a gift from you, not a resource I own. Teach me to seize each moment to return, rather than waste it on delay. Lord, rekindle within me the spiritual memory that has faded the days when I heard you as clearly as my own heartbeat. Let that memory become a bridge, pulling me from the pit, reminding me that peace is not a distant dream but a home I have abandoned. Lord, place my first step back into your hands. Teach me that returning does not require strength, only surrender. Help me know that I do not need to walk quickly, only in the right direction. Lead me like a father leading a child newly awakened, step by step, until my heart learns again how to hear your voice. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Do not forget to subscribe and enable notifications so that together we may build a strong community of faith